I am an alcoholic. And I'm zooming to you from the lovely kitchen of Hayes Lodge tonight. I'm glad I was able to make it. I started my day in Cary and ended up in like Greensboro and Marshall, and made it back following a very slow line of cars as it wended its way around Lake Lure, like about a quarter of, but I'm here. And like Leslie said, like I was asked, and it was really, a privilege. It is a privilege to volunteer, and I feel like such a part of this family at Pavillon. I tend to get a little bit nervous though when I share my story, and I don't know why. It's mine. I mean, it's one of the few things that I know intimately and very well, and I have the opportunity to be honest, not to exaggerate certain things, and I don't know what you'll get out of it, but I think it's what I do to keep myself sober one day at a time. Somebody shared with me this morning, another friend in recovery, and it was in quotes, "a life second to none." That doesn't mean the best life ever. It just means learning to live with gratitude and not spending our time endlessly comparing our lives to the lives of others. And I really believe that, the person that got up earliest today has more sobriety than I do, that I'm given a daily reprieve based upon the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And I have not done anything of this program or the program of Alcoholics Anonymous to perfection. I think basically I've stumbled through since April 3rd of 2002, and I haven't picked up a drink, a pill, or a fix of anything unprescribed one day at a time. And, it's gotten me to this point. And, it's really great to share my story with people that are right down the road and are in a similar situation that I was in almost 20 years ago. And, we're all going to struggle through step one until we reach that point of surrender. And so I don't want to spend too much time on what it was like. I had a 20-year period of concrete examples of not only where I was powerless over alcohol, but that my life, became unmanageable. And I don't know anything about my recovery that has promised to restore the manageability of life. But, one day at a time, I approach problems and situations as they come about. And, I've managed my outlook or my approach to problem solving. And at the top of that list is, again, not using a chemical. And I really think that given the number of meetings that I've been to, if somebody would have figured out a way to drink and use successfully, they would have shown up at one of those meetings and share that with me, and they have not. So I don't know what that says, other than, again, the life I live today is, really beyond my wildest dreams. I'm 57 years of age. I got sober when I was 37. And I come from a family that really, on both sides, there's a genetic predisposition. I have a great grandmother who lost her children at the turn of the century to alcohol. And for her, that was enough. I mean, that was enough for her to put it down. She never picked up a drink again. She didn't have the benefit of AA or a recovery program. And I think, many come to this spontaneously, but none of that seemed to work for me. And I spent a large chunk of my life trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I don't do much of that today. I mean, I have a self-diagnosed disease of addiction, and I have a treatment plan that I follow to manage that. I picked up my first drink probably in my middle teens, and there was something about it that just made me feel normal. I mean, up until that point in time, I felt relatively awkward. I felt uncomfortable in my own skin. And there was something about, chemicals, particularly alcohol. And my story comes just about, my favorite chemical is whatever you might have. But, it all started and ended with alcohol. Um, I never drank like normal people. Like I never stopped when I started to get that warm, fuzzy feeling. I mean, it was always how much more could I drink, and what idiotic behavior could I engage in? Um, and pretty much when I reflect, a lot of my decisions in life were made for me just because I had that primary relationship with a chemical. Um, I started in college, and I started at a particular major, but found that, studying and going to classes didn't fit in particularly well with the way I wanted to drink. And, my major changed, and, there's a downside to being able to not put your effort, 100% forward, and being a good test taker, so that you can get through, you can get a college degree. I ended up in law school, but I've always had these binge periods of drinking that, one, I found the benefit of, the hair of the dog, drinking early in the morning to take care of, how I was feeling. And again, there were just like, for many of us, it's not about the amount, it's not about the length of time that we drink. It's just, again, we come to that deciding point where we realize that we don't like the life we're living, and we also mourn the loss of alcohol. So somewhere along the way, I got through school. I started out on a relatively successful path as an attorney. I went to law school. I passed the bar. I went back to my hometown to practice. I met this wonderful woman who I eventually took hostage and married. But I mean, there were these signs, like these crystal clear signs. So I mean, I've always said, like, if I could write a book on how you could meet and keep the wife that I have, and her name is Adeline, like, I would be a rich individual. But it's like one of those, cosmic jokes that I have no idea. But I mean, I had, all the signs of, of alcoholism prior to our marriage. And we just celebrated, 26 years together, but the first 7 years were not good. And I always thought that there would be this, major life event that would change that relationship with alcohol. And for me, I thought it was getting a job, being a well-respected member of a particular profession, and working hard and doing well at it. That didn't seem to work. Getting married, taking on the responsibilities of that relationship, that didn't seem to work. All right, well, let's add a vulnerable child to the mix, whose name is Alec, and that didn't seem to work. And maybe one child is not the answer. Maybe the second one is going to be the one that is going to bring about this, like, maturity. And it just did it. We're coming up on Evan, my youngest son Evan will turn 21, and I hit a bottom, an emotional, spiritual bottom, November 18th or 19th, a little bit over 21 years ago, when I dropped my wife off at the hospital, drove down the road to not one of my favorites, but one of the liquor stores that was in the rotation of stops, and picked up some of my miniatures, my little dosing bottles of alcohol, and a fifth of what I was drinking at the time, and made my way back into the hospital. And I ended up drinking, the fifth all night. Somehow I was able to, convince my wife, convince my psychiatrist, who had put me on medication, that I had stopped taking my medication. But I mean, I took this, I took this bundle of joy, Evan, home, and I really, I just wanted things to end, and I just continued to drink like that on a daily basis, where I would drink throughout the day, pick up my kids while I was under the influence from daycare or school, and take them home and drink, throughout the evening, and then spend these miserable nights of just, coming to every hour on the hour and not getting a good night's sleep, and then starting the day and, drinking some mouthwash that I had underneath the counter, and dropping the kids off and being in front of the state store. And, my work was a mess also. I mean, we started across so many boundaries that, the ones that hurt the most were definitely the ones where my kids could not be safely in my care, and yet they were on a daily basis. And I started, messing around because I had no support system at work, where I would take all the money that came to my office, put it in one pile, and then pay bills out of that one pile. And somewhere along the line, that was explained to me that not only was that like one of those ethical violations for my practice, but it was also theft. But, that just didn't really hit me at the time. I tried anything and everything. I mentioned the psychiatrist. Right before getting married, I went to an AA meeting in 1995, and it was like, 7 more years before I got back to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because one look at you all, and I knew that there was absolutely nothing that you had to offer me. The second time around, because I had this family intervention, which, if you're slick and sophisticated and in the midst of an active addiction, like, you're the one controlling, the scenario, not anybody else. And so you, again, make these demands and tell people what you're going to do. And so I returned to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't know for you, but like for me, I went to this one particular meeting where you'd start like we started tonight, and you'd read how it works, and then you'd split up. And somehow I always ended up in the room where it seemed like everybody was, not drinking for 30 or 60 days, and then they would go back out and drink again. And, that I became frustrated. Like, you weren't teaching me how to drink successfully or to manage my drinking. And everybody that seemed to be, stopping and starting was as miserable as I was. So I just then stopped going again. Ultimately, I'm looking into this abyss. I'm considering taking my own life. Things are really deep and dark. And I picked up the phone and I called for a bed at a local treatment center. And they said, yeah, that's great. Like, we can't get you in for 30 days. And it was like, all right, that's perfect. 30 days to just like wrap things up, tie everything off with a bow, and end up there. But I just, again, could not stop drinking. And there's this one story that I haven't shared. I really haven't shared it with my family, but in my practice, I would have these checks and I would drop them off at the bank. And one particular day, like I was signing like my name so that it really was not even legible. Like, I have some of these checks around, and I was so under the influence in the middle of the day, because I would, pick up a fifth. I would go in my office. There was no support staff. I would drink. I would pass out. I would come to later in the day. If I didn't have to do anything at the local courthouse, I would go pick up the kids, pick up more alcohol, and make my way home. But this particular day, like, the teller behind the window said, we can't cash this for you. We can't deposit it. It's like, I don't even think I was coherent with my speech. And they wanted me to come into the bank, and I came into the bank, and I'm looking across the desk, and they know that I am completely not able to function, and they didn't want me to leave the bank. And so I did leave the bank. I got in my car and I made my way home, and they had called the police, but somehow, I stayed one step ahead of the law and made my way home. And, I never got in any type of trouble for that. And so, the question of whether I would, drive drunk is yes, but did I ever have a DUI? The answer to that question is no. So here I am in 2002. I finally make my way into treatment, believing that AA has nothing to offer, the 12-step fellowship has nothing to offer. And my first night there, I walk into this room where people are mouthing the 12 steps and 12 traditions as holy, insert your expletive there. What in the world have I'm back where I've started. I really just can't believe this. But, I wasn't going to leave. I figured I'd give it a shot. And it took a while. It took a good 2 weeks where I realized that I was killing myself and I really didn't want to anymore. But I started to have some hope, and I was able to have some hope because, they would bring in outside meetings, they would bring in outside speakers. And for, most of the time I thought a lot of people were just, it was the counselors that were sharing the stories, and it was you're just making this stuff up. There's no way you were that bad and that you came back from this and are really enjoying the life that you live today. But there was one particular group that came and they shared, and I'm sitting in the room and I'm listening, and they're telling me on Saturday nights, they get together, 9:30, they drink some coffee, they have a meeting, and then they go out, around 11, 12 o'clock for breakfast or dessert, cake and pie. And it was you know what? I really like pie. I think I can do this. So I had wonderful counselors. I had, a great experience. And essentially I just left after 28 days saying, I'm going to do what they tell me to do. And we'll see what happens. I'm not going to worry about work. I'm not going to worry about, anything else. I'm just going to take one day at a time. I'm going to go to meetings. I'm going to get myself a sponsor, and I'm going to do what they tell me to do. And I wound down my practice after the first year. And that was when, the proverbial S started to hit the fan. Because while I wasn't really worried about what my behavior had been like drinking, I was starting to realize some really great benefits. I had a wonderful sponsor who I meet with, about twice a week. I would go to, meetings on a daily basis. And I went into the right room this time, and the same people that I thought had nothing to share with me or offer suddenly were, spending time with me. They give me a big book, or they give me a 12 and 12. Days that my oldest, who was 4 years old at the time, had off, they would offer to take us to the zoo or, go and do these things. And, I was slowly and surely coming back to, the land of the living, and this is a program of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. But I have to say that it was the day before I left treatment where I thought, I would give myself a badge. I'd give myself gold stars for how, I was the #1 participant. I didn't get to be, the president of the men's community, but I came close, so it was, but I really wasn't honest. And it was really, only the day before I left treatment where I was part of this group, and this lady came in, and she was the wife of the preacher, the local preacher man. And, she started talking about drinking mouthwash, and everybody snickered for a little bit. And I really got got angry. I mean, I got angry at myself for holding on to this and not being as honest as I thought I was. But I did share that because that was, if it had alcohol in it, I would drink it. And pretty much on a daily basis, I'm the type of person that can tell you, you know, uh, what type of Listerine or mouthwash goes with meat and fish, because there's reds and there's whites and but they're all nasty. They're all nasty, but they have like about, a significant percentage of alcohol. And that was enough to, stop the shakes and stop me from feeling as sick as I was for that brief period of time until I could get, get the good stuff. So, I'm working with my sponsor, going through the steps, and at a little over a year sober, the president judge, I had this wonderful job with the county, where for about 15 years, I represented abused and neglected children in the courtroom. Like I terminate a lot of parental rights, like major hypocrisy. Like I was never, better than anybody else that I was sitting in judgment of. Well, I didn't sit in judgment. The judge sat in judgment, but I was doing a lot to, contribute to the outcome. And a lot of times that meant that people were not getting their children back. And often that was for, issues related to the use of drugs and alcohol. So at about a year sober, I was pulled in by the president judge, and they wanted me to resign because I had the local district attorney's office looking into the management of my accounts and all those discrepancies and taking money, thinking that I was owed it, and I was not. And they said, we want you to resign. And it's like, I'm not going to resign. You got to fire me. And like, this went back and forth for like about 20 minutes. And then ultimately I did. I just tendered my resignation. And the first thing I did was I called my sponsor. I didn't want to drink over that. I had learned that there were, life scenarios from divorce to jail time to, losing your children, death, taxes, whatever. I was listening to people say, this is how I went through this without picking up a drink. And I had enough, ego, again, healthy ego, to say, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And, I had started to repair this relationship with my wife. I started being a father to two very, very, young children. Both Alec and Evan were both under 5 in 2002, and Evan was just a little bit not even 2 years old when I put down the drink. And I really loved that. I loved the fact that some trust was coming back to our life, and I was really starting to be the husband that my wife deserved and the parent that both my sons deserved. So I was like, hey, all right, I'm going to get through this. And at 2 years sober, I started working at the treatment center that I went to, which was wonderful. But about 2.5 years sober, the district attorney finally decided that they were going to, file criminal charges. And I did the same thing. It was like, all right, I'm not going to drink over this. Let's just see what happens. I'm just gonna, suit up and show up and see, what happens. So at 2.5 years sober, I got arrested, 4 felony counts of theft. Repayment was not an issue. We had always set aside funds because, when it happened, we wanted to be ready to fully, reimburse and make amends. Like, it wasn't technically a 9-step amends, but we wanted to make sure that people walked away as whole as they could. And we moved to North Carolina, like big shit. What's really cool is if you start to look for the signs of a God of your understanding or a higher power, is I remember, getting an issue of the Grapevine, and it had a picture of the local tack club. I don't know if any of you are from the Raleigh Cary area, but there was a picture of the tack club. So I knew that wherever I was going, AA was going to be there, and I'd have meetings to go to, and I'd have these connections. I'd have this support system. So we moved down here. It'll be 17 years this December. And in May of 05, I had to return to Pennsylvania, and I pled out on those felony counts. And it was really, everything was on the table. I had a wonderful lawyer, but I had no idea, what was going to happen. We had rejected like what they call a plea agreement, where there was an X number of years for, as the sentence for what I pled guilty to. And I was advised by my attorney to not accept that. So, the DA does what any good DA does, is they up the number of years for not taking your plea agreement. And so literally I was standing before the judge on an open plea where, he had the opportunity to sentence me to 3 to 8 years, a state sentence. But what happened was, I appeared in court with my employer, the man who ran the men's unit at the treatment center I went to, who, while I had no great love for him the first time I met him, became like a really close friend. And I had my sponsor, and they both appeared with me that day in court. And what they did was they sentenced me to like 30 days in jail, the local jail, followed by 5 months of house arrest, where I got to wear, a little electronic bracelet on my ankle. And I actually went to work as a groundskeeper at the treatment center I went to. I mean, I lived with my mom. I woke up, I went to work, I'd come home, I'd go to meetings in the evening. The kids spent the balance of the summer with me. And then in August, they went down to North Carolina. And while it was, one of the most wonderful 5 to 6 months of my life, living sober, going to meetings, being a dad, I don't tell my wife that was like the best 5 to 6 months, because she was in North Carolina with no family. And when the kids returned, she had a struggle, but, we got through that. And I then made my way back to North Carolina. We weren't allowed to spend our 10th anniversary together. The probation office wouldn't let me do. And I finished like my supervision and parole in North Carolina. I love everything that has transpired during my sobriety. And, again, I love the life that I live today. One, I acknowledge that I was powerless over alcohol and my life had become unmanageable. I went to enough meetings that I like that whole transformative process of step 2, where you come to a meeting, and then you come to believe. I mean, it's definitely a process. But I came to believe that a power that greater than myself would restore me to sanity, which was, really lacking in my life. And ultimately, I just decided to turn my will and my life over to a power greater than myself. And, in my sponsor and I never had great lengthy discussions on what my higher power was going to be, or what I thought of God. He just wanted to know that I had one and that I used him. And often that has been nothing more than, good orderly direction or a group of drunks. I mean, I lean very heavily upon the support system that I've been able to build within the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I listed all my resentments. I did that under the direction of the sponsor, and then I shared it with, my sponsor. And for me, like, I think that is like, puts that stamp of validity upon a 5th step, which is sharing it with somebody else. Now, the problem was being so racked up with fear and paranoia, is that the first time I did my 4th step and shared it, is I did it in like some kind of code. And by the time I did it the second time with my sponsor, I forgot what the code was. So I ended up taking twice as long to do my 5th step the second time around as the first step, because, I didn't want all my, transgressions and sins to fall into the hands of somebody that might reveal them. And the nice thing is, like, if there's a name for it, somebody else has probably done it and done it better than you have. So I don't struggle a lot about what the nature of your sin is. It's, I look at my transgressions and share them. And then, 6 and 7 were a bit of a struggle. They seemed like these concepts that, I would be ready and willing to have my shortcomings, my defects of character lifted, and I would ask for them to be lifted. But, I would go to bed and I'd wake up and they were all there the same day. So, like, God did not, the God of standing did not remove them the way I wanted them and in the order that I wanted them. And it took a while for me to slowly settle into a pattern that I really approached the day that, I believe that when I need a particular shortcoming or defect of character removed to make me, as able to help another individual as possible, that defect, that obstruction is going to be removed. 8, I had just by taking the 4-step list and kind of plugging it in to 8. 9 was a bit of a challenge because I don't recommend doing 9-step work without the benefit of the sponsor, because some of my actual charges and criminal offenses came about as a result of me trying to speed up what I thought was an effective, way of making people whole. And it's really good to get some insight and some advice from somebody before you go out and shout to the world your transgressions and try and make them right. But I really live with the wonderful opportunity these days that people are presented to me and come into my life. And if I think they were on the 8-step list and I have, a 9-step amends to make, they show up. And I've had these wonderful, wonderful opportunities, even with, some people that I represented and even, younger children that have made their way into the rooms of 12-step fellowships today. And they're there, they're right in front of me. So obviously it's like, I take that opportunity. I say, like, I don't know, how much of an impact this might have had on you. I'm just not sure, but I just want you to know that I don't live that life, today. And typically, it's enough for people to just say, just like, keep doing what you're doing. Rarely have I seen or heard from somebody that says, like, I absolutely don't want any. There are sure some people that would prefer not to have anything to do with me. But it's been really good. And I try and do, a 10th step on a daily basis. If not a written 10th step, I do try and, make amends for any mistakes, as quickly as possible, because I just think I don't like to let any of this stuff build up. The 11th step, as far as prayer and meditation, have been wonderful. I had many of you know the wonderful Candace Champagne, who shared with me a new book yesterday on meditations, and I've incorporated into my morning spiritual routine. And over the years, I've accessed AA meetings, NA meetings, refuge recovery meetings, and I look for just as many spiritual tools that I can add to my toolbox. I'd have to say, like, today, while I did not pay too much attention in my undergrad years, I went to a Jesuit school, and I liken myself to, like, the Ignatian practice of trying to find my higher power in all things. And I'm doing a 12-step today. I turned in my license in 2005 and started to meet people around 2011 that encouraged me to apply to get my license back. And in 2015, while it picked up off a lot of like scabs and scars and raised a lot of like very, very difficult memories, I went before like a 3-judge panel with a great deal of support, and had this wonderful opportunity for the state of Pennsylvania to give me my license back. And so on a state and national level, I try and give back to not only, I consider myself a garden variety drunk, but I've been able to plug myself into like so many wonderful, wonderful tribes of people who are support systems. I have, that 12-step AA fellowship and NA fellowships. When I get to go to that, I have, my alumni group from the treatment center that I went to. I have this wonderful Pavillon family that I've been able to connect with later in my life. And I have, the support system from the North Carolina Lawyers Assistance Program and the American Bar Association's Lawyers Assistance Program. I live a life beyond my wildest dreams. Evan will turn 21 in a few short weeks, and Alec is 24, graduated from college. I've watched these wonderful, wonderful boys that, I was unable to take care of grow into wonderful young men who at this current moment don't seem to have a problem with substances, but they're even able to benefit. Evan goes to UNCG, and he's an ally of the recovering Spartans at UNCG. I have this wonderful spouse that again, I'm not sure whether I deserve her, but she stayed by my side, and our relationship today is really everything that I thought, a marriage was supposed to be. And I have the wonderful friends and family that I've made, living my life one day at a time, not putting a pill fix or a drink in, and just trusting. I used to live life like where the scope of what I thought my influence was a hula hoop. And in the last 2 years, I've reduced that hula hoop size to this 12-inch square at my feet. And I know that's really the only thing that I impact. And
I'm sorry, we're running out of time.
I think that's where I would close. I live a life beyond my wildest dreams. I wouldn't change anything about my recovery story. I'm sticking to it. And thanks for letting me share that with you this evening.